Hello everyone, today I'm here to talk to you about Harry Potter Death Eaters Rising. This is a game from the OP that they did give me to review. It's for 2 to 4 players and it says on the box it plays in 60 minutes. And to be fair, that's pretty much bang on, including sort of teach time. This is a cooperative game and each player is going to be basically forming a team of wizards. You're going to start off with one, and then by sort of slowly progressing throughout the game, you're going to rescue wizards and witches from 3 central locations, and they're going to come into your team. You're going to, at the same time, be trying to stop and defeat Death Eaters along the way, and then partway through the game, Voldemort himself is going to appear. Now, Voldemort is always there in the middle of the board and wreaking some havoc, but it's only partway through the game that the card comes out of the deck, and that's when you can actually try and defeat him. So until that point, you're building up and trying to survive and trying to make sure that the locations that are currently on the board don't get too corrupted. So how does a standard turn work for the players? Well, at the start of the turn, you're going to choose one of the 3 locations to visit. Now, at that point in time, it doesn't matter where Voldemort is facing, you are free to go to any location. And at each location, there's going to be the location card, as well as 3 cards. They could be witches and wizards to save, or they could be Death Eaters to defeat. Now, once you've chosen your location, you're going to put your team's marker there to indicate that's where you are. And then you have to roll the dice. Now, this isn't the dice that are going to be helping you. This is the 8-sided Voldemort sort of attack dice, effectively. Now, rolling that dice, it's going to show you a left or a clockwise, a counterclockwise, and a stationary result. Now, depending on which you roll, you turn Voldemort to face a new location. So it'll be from one to another or staying at the same one. The reason you're doing that is that he's then going to attack that location, damaging witches, wizards, and even your team if you're there. Unfortunately, it also triggers some of the abilities on Death Eaters. Death Eaters come with 2 different types of abilities. There's sort of standard ones, and then there's some of them have sort of powerful ones. And they trigger when Voldemort decides, or you've rolled for Voldemort to stay where he is. But it doesn't just trigger there, it triggers all the Death Eaters with that symbol, because it's the Death Eater symbol. So if you've got lots of sort of Death Eaters out, you can be in this phase of your turn triggering lots of negative effects. And effectively, the game is fighting back before you've had your turn. Next, it's turn for you to fight back against Voldemort on the board, and that is by rolling the dice. Now, each character, each team is going to start with a certain pool of dice, and then via tokens that you might acquire that you can spend for extra dice, you might get more. There might also, by sort of acquiring wizards later on, they might, for your team, they might give you the ability to, say, roll an extra purple die. Now, each die in colour represents a different type of stat, and they are going to be slightly better at one thing or another. Basically, each dice has sort of one side, at least one side, with a 2 value on one of the symbols, so it counts as double. Each colour has a different thing doubled up for you. So you roll the dice, and then you have to assign. Now, you have to assign at least 1, and if you don't, you have to basically discard a dice. Then you are free to re-roll and assign again. Now, you can choose just to, if you get the perfect roll, you can assign all of your dice accordingly, but normally you're going to sort of roll, maybe assign a couple, re-roll, assign a couple, and then hope that you're doing something with that final one. But what are you doing with this? Now, you're going to assign them to various locations. If you're assigning them to the witches or wizards that are at a location, that's going to be trying to sort of recruit them into your team. If it's the symbols on a Death Eater, if you're rolling the right symbols, you might be then damaging the Death Eater to then hopefully damage them enough to remove them from the game. But your team is going to have some sort of things you can do, like a fairly standard one is rolling a symbol and spending it to remove some corruption from the location you're at. That's pretty handy, as locations will get corrupted from Voldemort doing stuff there. So by just chipping away at that, or maybe giving health to some sort of slightly damaged witches and wizards, well, you can sort of prolong your team's life. When you've finished rolling, you're going to trigger all of this dice you've assigned. Now, if you haven't fully managed something, say you've got 2 swords, but you don't have the Phoenix, well, that doesn't happen, and that dice will just get discarded, but you trigger everything that you've managed to match all the symbols for. Any fully recruited witches and wizards come to your team, and any damage on them is thankfully returned to the pool off at the side, and they are then part of your team for future turns. If you damage a Death Eater, like I said, you add just one of the damage tokens there, and hopefully it'll be enough to remove them. At the end of your turn, any empty gaps in a location are then filled from the deck. And that could be, because that's shuffled at the start, that could be from the mixture of Death Eaters or Witches and Wizards for you to recruit. It's that deck that Voldemort is put approximately in the middle at the start of the game. So you do need to recruit and defeat some Death Eaters before Voldemort will fully appear. When he does, you'll start to be able to damage him if you're at his location. Now, there is some caveats to this. You can only damage him as much as there are Death Eaters eliminated. So it doesn't matter if he's appeared early because you've shuffled slightly differently, because unless you've defeated some Death Eaters, he's not going to be able to take enough damage for you to win. You play until a team is eliminated, when Voldemort wins and, well, the Death Eaters have risen, or you manage to successfully damage Voldemort enough to win. So it's a fairly easy game when you get into it. There's certainly a few steps and things to follow, but on the back of, say, your team card, there is like a rules summary, like a turn summary, which is really helpful for those first couple of rounds, just to make sure you're doing things in the right order. Like I suggested, the game sort of, normally cooperative games, fight back at you at the end of your turn. You've done some good and you're mopping up and trying to do good, and then the board comes and sort of beats you back down. In this, you're rolling at sort of basically at the start of your turn for Voldemort to do something bad, which is quite an interesting one because it's you sort of trying to survive the onslaught of Voldemort and the bad effects going on before you actually doing something. So you see the bad effect and then you might change your mind, but if you're in the wrong location, you're maybe not going to be able to save that person, so you do need to let them go. It's got all of the characters you'd know. Obviously it's got like the Harry, Ron, Hermione, but it's got all of the other ones, like quite an extensive back cast. And to be honest, I didn't know sort of the names of some of the characters. It's like, oh, I do remember seeing that person in that film, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you their name. And, I'm a slightly big Harry Potter fan. My wife is more, but, it's got that depth of cast for real fans of the series. And you know what? It does feel like, it's almost Dumbledore's army, which is one of the teams that you can play as. It does feel like, Dumbledore's army against some Death Eaters and Voldemort himself. It does have that sort of feel because you've got all the characters and then, you're sort of surviving the onslaught of evil. Of course, any game with dice that really revolve around dice, like this one, does have a good chunk of luck. It means it's really good for a family audience, and being cooperative, it's quite good for families as well, because with a bit of luck, anything is possible. It does mean that with a bit of unluckiness, that you can fall down and not really any fault of your own. And there's not too many ways to maybe make the game easier if you are finding that. But there are some ways around the luck, however. Now, you're not going to get around the Voldemort dice roll, But the rest of the rolls, there are ways to mitigate some of that luck. You can, for instance, get these tokens that are maybe symbols or give you extra dice to roll. So that makes it, either more chance or you've already got one symbol, so you just need to roll something else. So that's a nice way of doing it. And just from playing and picking up team members, you will expand your sort of dice pool, because you will easily, or relatively easily, get at least one character that says, if you've got another one of this type, get this type of dice, or some that are just generally get this dice. So by the end of the game, at the start of the game, there's not much damage going around, and there's not too many Death Eaters, hopefully, and you've got a small team. By the end of it, you're doing bigger turns, you're doing bigger actions, so it really does sort of build up from the start to the finish and gives you sort of more dice, more things to do, and hopefully you manage to smash down evil at the end. In terms of replayability, you can definitely play the game over and over again, but there isn't too much that's going to change. Apart from who comes out of the deck and what token you take and turn over, there's not too much going on that's going to be wildly different. Yes, the characters all have different powers, some of them are repeated and such, and the different teams you can start with, there's a little bit of variety there, but it's not got sort of a huge variety of locations. You've got a couple of locations at each, but you could see them all if you're doing badly within the first game, because when a location gets fully corrupted, it's removed and added to sort of Voldemort's buff pile, and then you see the next one. So you could see all of the locations in one game, and I kind of wish that maybe there were some extra locations, so you could pick sort of 2 locations for this place, and then maybe in another game you'd got a different 2 and you could shuffle them up. But you could play this game over and over again, and you're not always going to win. So sometimes you are going to agonizingly lose, and you'll want to go again to defeat Voldemort. I just wish there maybe was a touch more variety. When it comes to production, well, the board comes in 3 parts, and it's very easy to, like large puzzle bits almost, very easy to put that together. It's circular, which is a little bit different, and you have the sort of Voldemort statue in the middle. That's a really cool piece. Everyone walking past knows who Voldemort is, let's be honest. They're going to see that, and it's kind of like, ooh, what's that? That's interesting straight away. It does mean, because the board's circular, you've got some cards facing you, some cards facing away from you, but it's cooperative, so you can work with your teammates, and they can be like, oh, you need to get this person does that. It's not like a competitive game where they're not going to try to help you, you're working together. The dice are nice and chunky to roll, the cards shuffle really nicely, and I particularly liked having the artwork, like the screenshots, rather than like sketches, artwork sort of thing on the cards. I think that worked really well for Harry Potter. It's known, the films and stuff like that, so that works. I don't really have any problems with the production, to be honest, apart from some people might struggle reading upside down. Even the corruption tokens are these nice sort of black gemmy like things that work quite nicely and are easy to track on the cards. They got one thing, maybe the health, tracking some of the health is maybe a little bit fiddly, and if you knock some cards, then you've got to try and remember which card had which cubes on, but pretty much any game has that sort of problems. All in all, if you're a Harry Potter fan, well, I think you'd certainly get that sort of fix from this game. You do feel like you're not necessarily Harry Potter, but you do feel like you're in the Harry Potter world, wizarding world, trying to do good and stop Death Eaters and Voldemort. So you do get that vibe. I do like the way that you're building a team, and that you start small, and by the end you can have a huge team with loads of different abilities that are making you stronger and turns bigger and more fun. So that's really good. Yes, it's got luck, but it's got the luck of the dice rolls, then it's also got the thrill of the dice rolls for you. So if you're all right with that, well, I think you could really enjoy Death Eaters Rising, the Harry Potter version of this Rising series. Anyway, until next time, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you have. Check out other news reviews and such on the channel. Till next time, I'm Oliver East, signing out.